How do you take maternity leave? Nobody pays your salary. You are the one who is providing, perhaps even for your family. And so this space is really going to need to be created by you as well. So, how do you take a leave? How do you prepare your business to welcome a new baby and really give yourself that time off that you deserve with your family while not letting everything fall apart behind the scenes? When I was early on in my business, I was 3 years along when my son Frank was born, and a lot of things still relied on me. There were so many fires that I was still putting out. There were so many things inside of fulfillment that we were focusing on. And I remember feeling really overwhelmed and really nervous. We had some great people on our team at the time, and we still do. And I remember thinking to myself, I really just hope that they've got this. I really hope that they can step up and really, really support me through this process. And if I need to work, at least I'm doing so from home so I can make that happen. And boy, was I wrong. I remember welcoming our first son into the world, and there's this lovely picture that I actually really, really adore of me and my first son in my arms. We had just been moved from the delivery room over to the overnight, room that we would be in the hospital. And I was so happy that the birthing process was over and people were kind of stopping to like take my blood pressure all the time, and all the hands were off of me. And this photo was taken, and I literally remember almost every time I look at it that the next frame that we hadn't captured was me putting my sleeping son over in the bassinet next to me and grabbing my phone so that I could answer emails and Slack messages and tell my team that the reason I had been unresponsive over, that morning was because I'd had our son. And I remember feeling so obligated to share with them and obligated to respond to clients. And at the time, I wore it kind of like a badge of honor. I decided that, I was hardworking and that, I demonstrated such dedication to my business because I was willing to jump in and answer these questions while I was sitting in the hospital bed. But there was a little voice in the back of my mind that said, bullshit, Allie. You are literally choosing your business over your baby right now, and something needs to be different. And I remember sitting there when they were giving us the birth certificate, and I was really sitting there like, are they actually going to let us take this guy home? Like, is that really what's going to happen here? And we were preparing to leave, and I knew that when I got home, I was going to need to be a different person, both in my business and at home, to be able to really create the type of life that I wanted in my personal life and the type of business that I wanted to run in my professional life. And, it was super confronting. The systems girl didn't have any systems at that stage in the business. We were super early on, and a lot of it was tied to me. We didn't have the resources for a team. So I was really trying to understand how moms could, outsource their cleaning and outsource their cooking and, access all of this stuff that we talk about that's so nice for moms to have. But I felt like I just didn't have the resources to be able to do it. So, the biggest things that we want to talk about when we start to plan our leave and we start to really usher in this new version of our life, right? What does our business look like after baby? First and foremost is to get a handle on the finances, right? If we aren't financially secure, it's unlikely that we're going to be in a position where we're going to have a super successful leave. I was in that camp. I didn't have a huge cash reserve. I was serving clients one on one. They were basically paying my salary, and then I was fulfilling on all of the stuff. So I had a very traditional service based model. And I remember taking some time over that early maternity leave to consider what would it be like if we were able to raise our revenue, and how might I feel a little bit more supported, like getting some of those administrative things off of my plate. So the second big domino that needed to fall was identifying and structuring an operations function inside of the business. We helped people with their operations day in and day out. We still do over at Operations Agency. And one of the biggest things that I was able to do through the maternity leave process was identify and structure an operations function for myself and consider what is the 80-20 rule around how we were serving clients, right? What is the 80% that was standard that my team could easily take on, and the 20% where I really crushed it and add value for them and felt like we really were able to meet them where they were at. And so we did that hard work. We hired in team members that were able to help us compile standard operating procedures and train them on my best practices and methods, make sure that we had clear projects in place and all of those things. And it really was instrumental to being able to grow the business, but also weave me out of a lot of the administrative functions. So really identifying what is our core process for transformation. I always joke that folks work one-on-one, to prove to themselves that they can do it, and really to identify what is their core process for transformation, right? So if you don't have that nailed down right now, if you're a service provider and you are basically trading time for money, or you are in a position where your clients are kind of just paying you to show up and be there and be the Swiss Army knife, I was in that position too. And what you need to do is consider that that is excellent for a time. But as you usher into motherhood, it might need to change ever so slightly and be a little bit more repeatable to provide that consistency, both in operations and in financial planning, is absolutely key. And the third bit, and I talk about this all the time, is making sure that you have a good handle on your data. So, what are the core drivers moving the business forward, right? How many new leads do you have coming in? About how long does it take those leads to perhaps book a call with you and become a paying customer? How long is your sales cycle on average? And how long does it take you to fulfill on a project? Or how long on average are you keeping a client if you work in a retainer model? We also want to make sure that we've got some baseline numbers on profitability, because that will tell us how aggressively we can reinvest back into growing the business. Now, these three things, first and foremost, do not happen overnight, right? You're not going to build financial stability by just wishing it into existence and waking up in the morning and you've got 3 months cash reserve in the bank. It's not going to happen that way. What is going to happen is we're going to need to implant some incremental habits and really start to move the ball forward on putting a little bit of money aside for our leave, making sure that we are developing some of those systems ahead of time, and really being intentional about identifying what the core drivers are for the business, really moving us forward in marketing, in sales, in fulfillment, and in systems. Because ultimately, when your plate is shrunk, right, when you have way less time to deal inside of the business, we need to be 100% focused and understanding of what is going to drive it. So if you have an hour and you're like, I'm super excited to make some content right now, what is the outlet? How are we getting in front of the most people in that hour? If you have an hour to go and make sales conversations, if you have an hour to go and do some fulfillment, where is your time best spent, and what is going to be the biggest driver so that you can have a super successful time away from the or with the family? And when you jump back into the business, you're doing things that are actually moving you forward and that you probably actually like doing, right? Because a lot of us, when we're in that growth mode, we get super excited about jumping back into the business. Nobody wants to get pulled in to answer 1,000 emails and troubleshoot a website that went down, right? We really want to be intentional about the way that we're serving. And if we're going to leave our baby, it better be worth it, right? It better be exciting for us. It better be driving the business forward. So doing these three things is not easy, but it is simple. Right? It's going to be challenging, but these three things are tested, tried, and true. This is not a tip, a trick, a hack, a shortcut by any stretch of the means. This is what we have used to structure high 7 and 8 figure growth focused businesses, to really, really make sure that their operations are so sound, that it really, really is easy as can be, to move folks in and out of their roles and out of positions. And it can certainly help you plan a really intentional maternity leave. I hope this is helpful. I hope that if you're enjoying the videos that you will subscribe, and I'll see you next time.